Friends, welcome back. Last class we have just completed the concept of DCA and some more concepts. So we'll be learning now. Going to share the screen with you. Yeah. So friends, when we are learning about section 7, we have seen what is the meaning of services under GST law. And in that context, we have also understood one more concept, that is importation of services. And we know importation of services without consideration is chargeable to tax, whether it is in the course of business or not, or whether it is in the course or furtherance of business or not, it will be considered as supply. Okay, but the para 4 of schedule 1 confirms some more thing. It says the importation of service by a person from a, can you read it out? From a, which is underlined, related person. Okay, from a related person or from his establishment located outside India. Okay, in these two situations, without consideration, in the course or furtherance of business shall be treated as supply. Okay. Are you getting? That means if it is not in the course or furtherance of business and it is imported from a related person or from an establishment located outside India without consideration, that is not going to be treated as a supply of services. Okay. Okay, I think this ambiguity is clear to some extent. So now let us see, this is a situation I am giving you. First of all, you see, J and Associates received legal consultancy services from its head office at Malaysia. The head office renders such services free of cost to its branch office. I again showed you this thing, this previous slide. So importation of service from a person who is related or from his establishment located outside India without consideration, in the course of furtherance of business, shall be treated as supply. Now tell me in this case whether it will be treated as supply or not.
Sir, it will be treated as.
As you are saying, right? So head office is the related person, it will qualify as supply. Okay, even if head office has not charged anything from it. Okay. One more example I am giving you. Mr. C, a proprietor or is a proprietor registered in Delhi, has sought architect services from his son located in US with respect to his newly constructed house in Delhi. Now tell me whether it is supply or not. It is without consideration, but thing is that it is not related to.
This is for family, not for like in a business purpose.
Yeah, so whether it will be treated as supply, it's not for business. Yes or no?
No, sir.
No, sir.
You're right. It will not qualify as supply since the same has not been received in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, I think these concepts are clear. Okay, now one more concept we are going to learn. This is about the sales promotions. You might have seen many suppliers, many businessmen, many traders employ various sales promotion schemes. Very commonly they employ. Okay, so many cases you can find that the offer is like this: buy one get one free. Okay, BOGOF they call it. Okay, buy one get one free. So in that case, some people may think that you see one product is supplied, another product is supplied without consideration. Whether that will fall under the ambit of supplier. Okay, you might have seen this transaction. You buy one sub and get one more sub free. or buy 3 soaps, you get the fourth soap free, like this. Okay, if you're buying something like this, that question might be coming to your mind, that whether the free item will be treated as supply for consideration or. Okay, and you already know that goods or services which are supplied free of cost shall not be treated as supply. Why it is not going to be treated as supply? Because it is without consideration. Okay, except in cases of the activities which are mentioned in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 we have already seen. In those cases, for those kind of transactions which are mentioned in the Schedule 1, even if there is no consideration, it will be still treated as supply. But except those transactions, in other cases, if supply has been made without consideration, okay, then that will not be technically treated as supply. And in that context, one point also we know that when you say consideration definition we have understood separately, and you know that consideration need not flow from the buyer himself. It may flow from outside. Okay. Now, what do you think that if let us say you are buying 3 soaps and 1 soap is free, so what is coming to your mind? That whether that supply of that free soap is a supply or not? We have not discussed about the technicalities of this situation, but what is coming to your mind? What do you feel?
Sir, it will not be supplied.
So your point is that it should not be treated as supply because consideration is not. Okay, but let us now learn the technicalities. Let us say which situation it will be treated as supply. What is the reason for that? Now, first, one more concept you see, certain cases we give free samples. Free samples which are supplied free of cost without any consideration do not qualify as supply, because you already know that there are certain transactions which are, if let us say consideration is not there, it's not supply. Okay, except activities which are fallen within the ambit of Schedule 1. All other cases, if there is no consideration, there is no supply. But this is we're talking about free samples, not buy one get one kind of offer. Okay, buy one get one kind of offers are separate. Okay, now let us see about the buy one get one free BOGO offer kind of thing. Right. So when you see this kind of offer, what is coming to your mind, what appears at a fast glance is that you buy one, get one free. That means one item is being supplied free of cost without any consideration. But in fact, it is not an individual supply of free goods. It's not that something, it's not giving something you as a free sample. But it is a case of 2 or more individual suppliers where a single price is charged for the entire supply. So they are in fact 2 different supplies, but one price is charged. And that price also includes the product, the goods which you feel that it is supplied to you free of cost. So there are 2 or more individual supplies for a single price. Okay, so it can be treated as supply of 2 goods for the price of 1. Now, whether it is taxable under GST law or not, it depends upon one more thing, that the concept, whether it is a composite supply or it is a mixed supply. And on that basis also, tax rates shall be determined. Of course, we have not yet learned the concept of mixed supply or composite supply. Our plan is to learn it, or maybe in the next session we'll be learning what is that. So at that time, it will be clear to you. But right now, keep it in the mind that it may not be 2 individual supplies. Yeah, it may be 2 individual supplies, but with a single price. Okay, now you may start thinking If that is the situation, whether that is treated as supplier. Okay, and when you will be learning the concept of composite supply and mixed supply, it will be clear to you whether what kind of supply it is and what is the rate of tax which is to be charged. Now, friends, few concepts are there like activities and transactions which are to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. You see, earlier also we have discussed this point. Section 718 of GST Act, of CGST Act, clarifies certain activities and transactions which constitute supply of goods or supply of services. And the second schedule of CGST Act also contains the list of activities and transactions which have been classified either as supply of goods or as supply of services. In both the places, these things are discussed with an intention to clear ambiguity. Okay, so one situation we'll see. Prior to this GST law, that means prior to 2017, as you know, GST law came into 1st July 2017. So you know there was VAT, value added tax, on sale of goods. When goods are sold, VAT was there. And when services are provided, then service tax was levied. Okay, have you heard of it or not? VAT and service tax. Earlier, these taxes were there. Now, when someone is going, let us say, going to a restaurant and having food there, in fact, if you analyze the transaction, it consists of two things. One is supply of goods, not supply, the sale of goods. At that time, supply definition was not there. Supply definition was included in GST law. So one is sale of goods, therefore VAT should be levied on that. Second is the services rendered, therefore service tax has to be levied on that. So that is the situation. But under GST regime, what has been done? When we say supply of restaurant, it is treated as a composite supply. Okay, because it is quite natural, or you can say the goods and services are naturally bundled in ordinary course of business. Ordinary, when you go to a restaurant, they give you bundled services. They'll give you the food as well as they'll give you the services. So therefore, it is called as the naturally bundled. The concept of naturally bundled will be again learning subsequently when you will be learning the concept of composite supply. So here it is quite natural. Okay, so it will be treated as a composite supply. And now question comes whether it's a composite supply of goods or composite supply of services. Now Schedule 2, second schedule specifically provides that such composite supplies shall be treated as supply of services, not supply of goods. Hence the entire value of invoices, restaurants invoices, shall be treated as value of service, and accordingly GST will be levied. Right. So restaurant services, even if it includes some goods, includes some supply of goods in it, but it will be still treated as a provision, a supply of service. This has been clarified in second schedule. This part is, I think, clear. Now let us look into some more situations. There are certain matters which are listed in Schedule 2, but I expect you to participate and answer me. First situation you see. This is an activity of transport. Look at the scale. When any transfer of title of goods is involved, for example, Mr. S sells ready-made garments to its customers. Garments are sold to the customer. The title or the ownership of the goods transferred to the customer. Now, if that is the thing, there is a transfer of goods where title is transferred. What do you think? It is a supply of goods or supply of services?
Goods.
It is supply of goods. You are absolutely right. This is supply of goods. Now, one more situation I am telling you. Any transfer of right in goods or undivided share in goods without transfer of title of goods. The title in goods are not transferred, but right to use the goods, the right in goods are transferred. Or if there is some undivided share in the goods, that share, that part ownership is transferred. Okay. In that case, let us see an example. Let us say one company gives a machinery on rent to another company. Machinery on rent. When I say machinery on rent, the title in goods is not transferred. What is transferred is the right in the goods is transferred. Now, what do you think? It is a supply of goods or supply of services?
Sir, supply of services.
Supply of services. Very good. That's exactly. It has been explained. Now, one more situation. Any transfer of title goods under an agreement which stipulates that property shall pass at a future date upon payment of full consideration as agreed. That means here is the situation. Title in goods are transferred. Okay, but there is an agreement which stipulates that the property in goods shall pass on the future date. Property in goods are not transferred right now. It will transfer at the future date, subject to fulfillment of certain conditions. There is full consideration. It's paid, the property in goods will be transferred. But title in goods is transferred. Okay. For example, let us say one company has supplied some goods on higher purchase basis to its customers. So as you know, as students of finance or students of accounts, you know what higher purchase scheme what happens. When the last installment is paid, last higher charges are paid. After that, only ownership get transferred to the higher. Okay. So another example you can see. A company supplies toys to the retailers on sell or return basis. Company supplying toys, which maybe retailer may sell it or return. That means full title is not transferred. They can return it. In this situation, these examples I told you, the higher purchase situation, that is sale or return basis transfer, whether this kind of transfer will be considered as supply of goods or supply of services. What is coming to your mind?
Supply of goods, sir.
You feel it is supply of goods?
Sir, services.
Yeah. No, it is supply of goods. You are right. Okay, it has been specifically clarified, then this will be treated as supply of goods. Property of goods has not transferred now, but will transfer at a future date. If that is the situation, then you have to remember this is supply of goods. Okay. Next example related to land and building. Lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy any land. For example, lease agreement of land. Is it a supply of goods or supply of services?
Services, sir.
Good.
Yeah, I think some of you were saying supply of goods, some of you were saying supply of services. But again, I see lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy land. Think of once again and give me your answer. This will be supply of services. Now, any lease or letting out of building, including commercial, industrial, or residential complex for business or commerce, wholly or partly. For example, a shop let out in a busy market place. Is it a supply of goods or supply of services?
Services, sir.
Services. Okay. Now, next situation I'm saying. Treatment or process. A treatment or process which is applied to another person's goods. Another person's goods. Okay, suppose you have given your car for painting. Right. So service provider has painted your car. Or you have given your clothes for dyeing, and the laundry has dyed your clothes. Is it a supply of goods or supply of services?
Services.
Supply of services. So no doubt about it. So if the process involves if for any treatment, if the transaction involves a treatment or process of some other person's goods, then ownership of the goods is not getting transferred, property is not getting transferred, but you are applying a process to it. So it is a supply of services. Now, friends, you see transfer of business assets. Goods forming a part of business assets are transferred or disposed of by or under direction of a person carrying out the business, so as no longer no longer to form a part of those assets, whether or not for consideration. So let me explain you. This is a case of transfer of business assets. Business assets are transferred under the direction of the owner, so that it will be no longer made available to me. Okay, now tell me, when these business assets are transferred, is it a supply of goods or it's a supply of services?
Goods.
Supply of goods, that is coming to your mind, that's good. So it is supply of goods. Now, next situation. Goods held or used for business, but put to private use. Okay, it is business goods, but it used for put to private use, or are made available to any person for use. Okay, why? For what it is available? It is made available for use for any purpose other than business, by or under direction of the person carrying on the business, whether or not for a consideration. Thing is that here business assets are transferred for use. Is it a supply of goods or services?
Services.
Services. Because here, as you can understand, assets as such are not transferred, it's transferred for private use. In that case, it is supply of services. Good that you have been able to identify the logic behind the situation. Okay, the example what we discussed right now, here is an example. A sole proprietor owns a laptop used for making office presentation. He transfers the laptop to his son for making a school project. Now, is it a supply of goods or it is a supply of services?
Services.
Services, very good. Supply of services. Now, one more important thing, let us see. Okay, what is this? Now you see, goods forming part of assets of business carried on by a person who ceases to be a taxable person. I think, yeah, earlier we have discussed about who is a taxable person. We have already discussed. Okay, who is liable to pay GST, or who has registered himself under GST law, he is a taxable person. But he ceases to be a taxable person. He might have surrendered the GST registration. He is no longer liable to pay GST. Okay, so goods forming a part of assets of the business carried out by a person who ceases to be a taxable person shall be deemed to be supplied by him in the course of furtherance of business immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person. This concept we have also discussed earlier. When he ceases to be a taxable person, whatever was the business goods with him, okay, business assets with him, okay, so it will be deemed that he has supplied in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, for example, let us say a trader is winding up his business. Any goods which are left in his stock shall be deemed to be supplied by him. Understood? Or there are exceptions. Two exceptions are there, where business is transferred as a going concern to another person. In that case, it will not be treated. The stocks will be continued to be the business stocks. Or another situation, business is carried on by the personal representative who is deemed to be taxable person. In that case also, it will be considered that business assets as a business asset. Otherwise, it will be considered a supply. Now, when it will be considered as a supply, is it a supply of goods or is it a supply of services? What do you think?
Services.
Again, I repeat, what is supply? Goods forming a part of business assets. And the person suggests to be a taxable person. So, what is transfer? Of course, it is a deemed supply. Now, once again, you think. Okay, now have a look. It is supply of goods. Okay, it has been clarified that it is supply of goods. Because effectively, what is transport or what is deemed to be supplied is the goods. Is it clear to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, renting of a movable property. For example, renting of a commercial complex, rentings of resident of a religious place, renting of property to an educational institution, then permitting use of movable property for placing vending, dispensing machines, etc. So, use of immovable property, permitting use of immovable property for placing vending or dispensing machine, etc. You might think in many places, one shopkeeper might have allowed his veranda to somebody else to put a vending machine or dispensing machine. Okay, like this kind of renting or permitting use of movable property. What do you think? Is it a supply of goods or supply of services? I think this will be
Supply of services.
services of supply of services. Very good. Okay. Now, here one more situation I am showing you. Construction of complex building, civil structure, etc. Construction of a complex building, civil structure, or a part thereof, including a complex or building intended for sale to the buyer wholly or partly. That is the situation. Okay. Except where the entire consideration has been received after issuance of completion certificate, where required by competent authority, or after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. That exception for the timing, ignore this exception part. Just I'm asking you whether this construction of building complexes, etc. Is it a supply of goods or supply of services? For example, let us say our builder has constructed individual residential units of this many for a consideration of this per unit. Okay, rupees 90 lakh per unit were received before issuance of completion of certificate by competent authority and balance after completion. So this thing happens. Let us say this construction work carried out. Is it a supply of goods? Is it supply of goods or supply of services?
Services.
You are right. It is supply of services. But there is an exception where the entire consideration has been received after issuance of completion certificate. Okay, so competent authority has given a completion certificate that is completed. Okay, fully usable thing. Okay, and after that it is sold, it is transferred. Okay, after its first occupation, or it is after first occupation, somebody has occupied it and then it is sold. Then it may be treated as supply of goods, otherwise it is supply of services. And construction includes additions, alterations, replacement, remodeling of an existing civil structure. The expression competent authority by government means many situations you see. Architects which are registered under Council of Architecture constituted of Architects Act 1972, or a chartered engineer registered with Institution of Engineers of India, a licensed surveyor of the respective local body or city or town or village development planning authority. If that certificate is there, that is a different thing. Okay, one more thing we'll see: temporary transfer of permitting use of enjoyment of intellectual property right or temporary transfer of patent. Okay, so one IPR, temporary transfer of intellectual property right or temporary transfer of patent. What is coming to your mind? It is supply of goods or supply of services.
Services.
Good. Now you see, development, design, programming, customization, adoption, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of IT software with solution or solution develops an accounting software for a business. So all these things, is it supply of goods or supply of services? Services. Now you see, agreeing to refrain from an act or tolerate an act or situation. For example, one cable operator might have entered into with another cable operator so that entered an agreement with another cable operator so that there will not be any competition among them. That kind of agreement. Or late delivery charges recorded from supplier to non-fulfillment of contract within stipulated time. Or notice pay recovered from employee for leaving the job before agreed period of notice for leaving a job. Okay. So all these situations, are they supply of goods or supply of services?
Services.
You are right. They're supply of services. Even transfer of right for use of goods for any purpose of machinery, that is supply of services. Composite supplies like works contract, like cost to contract for building, construction, fabrication, completion. These are the works contract related services. Modification, they are also supply of services. Okay, they are also supply of services. Supply of goods by an unincorporated association, body of persons to members for cash, deferred payment, or other valuable consideration. For example, might be in an apartment, there might be resident welfare association, and it supplies air conditioner to its members at a concessional price. So this kind of situation, it will be treated as supply of goods, right? Because goods are in fact so. Hope it is clear up to this. Okay, now you have understood which situation is treated as supply of goods and which system is treated as supply of services. Now, one more important, is it clear up to this? So that we can start the next item.
So in before example, you told about the building, like the amount, if any partially or some amount will be paid beforehand, then it will be considered as a goods. But if afterwards, it will be considered as supply.
No, you told the reverse. Okay, only after building is, but before completion is some amount is paid, it is supply of services.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Is it clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Any other query? Now, one more item we are going to learn. This is about supply of tenancy right. What is that? Let's understand first. Sometimes what happens in some part of our country, that is a system. There is a concept of tenancy right. That the tenancy has got a right to stay in that house on rent. Many part of the in many parts of our country where there is a Rent Control Act, this kind of practice prevails. Tenancy, the tenant can sell that right to somebody else. So if a tenant wants to leave the house, he can sell that tenancy right to somebody else. That new person now has got a right to stay in that house. Okay, this system is in a local language that is called as the Pagdi system. Let us understand what is that. And in that transfer, whether that will be attracting GST or not, we are going to learn that. Okay, so Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs have clearly clarified it that tenancy rights are under GST. GST are leviable under that. Okay, this system, which is referred to as Pagdi system, here what happens. Transfer of tenancy right against the tenancy premium is prevalent in some part of our country. That means somebody pays a tenancy premium, which is called the Pagdi. Once Pagdi is given, that amount is given to another person. That means he becomes the owner of the tenancy right. In Pagdi system, the tenant acquires tenancy right in the property against payment of tenancy premium. He pays the tenancy premium or Pagdi and acquires that right. The landlord may be the owner of the property, but the possession of the same lies with the tenant. Tenant possesses the property and he has the tenancy right. Okay. And the tenant also usually has the option to sell the tenancy right. Tenant pays the periodic rent to the landlord and occupies the property. He has option, he can sell the tenancy right. Okay, in case the landlord wants to vacate the tenant, what he can do, he can buy the tenancy right from the tenant. Okay, the landlord pays the tenant the prevailing tenancy premium and get the property vacated. Okay, so example of the areas are can say state is Maharashtra. There is a Maharashtra Rent Control Act. Okay, so under that this practice prevails. Now it has been clarified that the activity of transfer of tenancy rights for a consideration, that means the transfer of that Pagdi or the tenancy or transfer of the tenancy right for Pagdi. Pagdi is called as the consideration. Pagdi is referred to as tenancy premium. So it has been clarified. This kind of transfer squarely covered under the supply of service under GST. GST is leviable and it's a supply of services. It is a form of leasing. It is a form of lease or renting the property, and such activity specifically declared to be a service in Para 2 of second schedule. It has been discussed, lease, easement, all these things are covered. This Pagdi system falls under that. So it is, you can say this is covered under GST. Okay, some people may say that when this transfer, some part of the country, when the tenancy right is transferred, people might have to pay registration charges, stamp duty, etc. And some people may believe that since stamp duty is paid or registration charges are paid, it will not be subject to GST. No, that argument is not valid. Even if registration charges are levied or even if stamp duties are paid, still the transfer of tenancy right will be a subject matter of GST. And the transfer of tenancy right cannot be treated as sale of land or sale of building. Thus, it is not in the list of activities which are called as the negative. The list which is called as the negative list. What is negative list will be learning further, learning subsequently. That is a list of supplies on which GST will not be levied. But tenancy right is not covered there. Okay, to summarize, the activity of transfer of tenancy right is squarely covered under the scope of supply of taxable services. So the transfer of tenancy right to a new tenant against a consideration is a form of tenancy premium is taxable under GST. So when the outgoing tenant gets the tenancy premium from the ingoing tenant, for the incoming tenant, this will be liable to GST. Okay, is it clear to you? Okay, and here one more concept we have to remember, which has come subsequently by way of exemption. Grant of tenancy right in a residential dwelling. So in a residential dwelling area, not commercial, we are talking residential dwelling area, for use as residence dwelling against tenancy premium. So tenancy right is granted against tenancy premium or periodic rent or both. When that is granted in a residential dwelling area. Okay, and a premium is charged or rent is charged. That is exempt. Okay. So tenancy right, or you can say grant of tenancy right in a residential dwelling for use as residence dwelling against tenancy premium, periodic rent or both is exempt from tax. This has been covered in entry number 12 or notification of 12 by 2017, dated 28/6/2017. Subsequently, you will be learning about that. That part is exempt. Is it clear to you? So this was about the concept of tenancy right. The next concept, in the next class, we'll be learning this thing. It's about the negative list under GST. Okay, just have a look. We'll be discussing all these things in the next session. So here we are learning the schedule 3 of the GST Act. Just have a look. You see certain activities are there which are in the negative list. Okay, meaning this shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. Okay, you see this is the list. One by one, we'll be learning all these things. Okay, then few more concepts we'll be learning. After that, we'll be coming to the concept of composite and mixed supply. What is composite supply? What is mixed supply? We'll be learning. With this, what is the concept of natural bonding? We'll be learning. So with that, we'll be able to complete the concept of supply. Whatever you have learned now, is it clear to all of you? Yes or no? Any specific query you have? Hope there is no query. Thanks a lot.